I think that our technology is helping us catch up with our consciousness. It is an externalization of that which we in consciousness and in high mystical experiences have always known. For example, we've always known that we are one body in mystical experience. All men are members of one body. Now through the externalization in the space program and television, you see, hey, it's true. We've always known that this body is going to change. And now through genetic research, we are discovering, yes, indeed, it can be changed. So I see that the growing edge of technology, when fused with the intentionality of becoming co-creative with God, is part of the tools of co-creation. I see a continuum of technology starting with the synthesis of elements, and the genetic code is an information technology. Photosynthesis is an industrial process of nature. Our mind-body system have the technological aspect, like if you have an operation, you put in a new vein or a new little widget somewhere in a hip. That's part of you is mechanical, no doubt. All right, your thumb is a magnificent technological triumph. Now what we're doing through the mind is simply making increased instruments, but like that newborn baby, we don't know what they're for. Now let's assume that what they're for is to help us become co-creative with evolution itself, to restore this earth, to build new worlds in space, to change our bodies. If we used our technology in alignment with the purposes laid down in the New Testament, they would help us build the New Jerusalem. And our current technologies are extremely crude compared to where they're going. And it is interesting, as Fuller and others have pointed out, the ephemeralization of technology that occurs in nature and in humans. And we start out with these great galumphing objects, and then you end up with the microchip and the laser beam and the space satellite. And technology itself is becoming less mechanistic and more bio, psycho, noological. So even the word technology, we mustn't imagine belching steel factories and Cadillacs as what it's going to be, any more than the dinosaur is the best that nature's been able to do in bodies. Another very interesting thing about observing evolution is that aesthetics is inherent in evolution. Everything that endures is beautiful. At the early phases of each form, it's awkward. The first birds, the first mammals, the first humanoids. And then you notice the tendency to sleek out. And finally you get a beautiful form, a cat, a tiger, a turtle, a bird. In this analogy, we haven't gotten there yet. Our technology is still ugly. We're not really creating beautiful environments. We're new at it. However, if we survive, whatever we create will eventually be beautiful too, or it won't endure. You know, just taking the 15 billion year trend. Yes?
You were saying the whole population will become totally spiritual?
What I'm saying is that at the time of that sudden shift, you will be affected according to the state of mind you're in. And that according to evolutionary possibilities, what used to be very difficult for you would have to be a saint-like being, becomes easier and easier as more and more people get it. And when a critical mass of people are experiencing themselves as connected, loving their neighbor as themselves, it becomes accessible to everyone. Now here's an analogy that is fascinating. Imagine the dawn of self-consciousness. What was it like for the first one to get up there and know that he wasn't an animal? It must have been very unstable and uncertain. And maybe they went back into the feeling, forgetting, and then eventually every child born inherits self-consciousness. A self-consciousness from an evolutionary point of view is an enormous step forward. Now we have, at the early human history, these individuals in, let's call it, cosmic consciousness. very few, flicker in and out, flicker in and out, more, 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 more. Speed up, shift, it becomes a common inheritance. And the other stage of consciousness may become extinct. Nature extincts species. It is possible that nature will extinct self-centered consciousness. It is not a viable trait at the level of evolution we're at. If nature doesn't extinct self-consciousness, self-centered consciousness, we will be destroyed.
Because it was necessary at one time.
It was very necessary. So instead of criticizing it altogether, you say in its time it created intellect, individuality, human civilization. Now it must evolve. There's a very good book called Cosmic Consciousness, The Evolution of Consciousness by Dr. E.M. Buck. And he makes a study of people throughout all of history who have been in the state of cosmic consciousness and relates it to evolution's tendency to have higher and higher forms of consciousness. And he believes, as I do, that eventually it will be the norm. But it isn't that you and I will suddenly become saints. Because you see, if we have to expect that of ourselves, we probably won't make it. Yes?
Sort of a moral question. What ought we do? I feel sort of like the young man saying, well, I obey all the laws, what should I do? And I hear you saying, well, probably we should just do what we do and do it as best we can and have a belief in a positive future. Is there more to what ought we do now?
Very good question. I'll tell you the best answer that I've come up with, that I've applied to myself, is the first thing is I ask myself, am I completely satisfied that I am acting up to my best? Am I doing that which is most creative contribution I can make to the world? If the answer is yes, you're fine. But if the answer is not quite, there is more that I can do, then the second step is to say, what more do I want to do? And I have a set of exercises I call the compass of joy. And I let myself feel myself doing something more, not as some kind of duty or obligation or thing, but as some kind of growth experience. And in my own case, I had 5 children. I was doing everything I was supposed to do, but I knew there was something more I wanted to do. And I began to ask. And for me, the compass of joy kept going to communicate. I'm a speaker. When I'm talking like this, I really feel good. I love it. So I started to speak a little bit. And then I thought, well, I've got to meet somebody else because I can't be in this vacuum of my only person trying to do this. This was back in 1966, 67. So I started, and I was one of the early networkers. Once you've identified that more what you want to do, you find, is there anybody else who wants to do that or is already doing it? And the beauty of now, as contrasted to the early 60s, is there's a network of interested people for absolutely everything new that you might think of. In consciousness, in health, in community, in space. And you go find your brothers and sisters who are at the growing edge of their own capacities. And then you go to conferences and you support each other and you make friends and you start bonding. Something like you and I have begun to do. And then you find that networks of different types are interacting. And occasionally you get at a nodal point where lots of different people, all of whom are trying new things, are interacting with each other. And that's when you get the hint of the transformation as being real. Because you are buoyed up by the energy of countless others, all of whom as individuals are real nothing. And this phenomenon of networking is massive. Millions and millions and millions of people. In fact, Daniel Yankelevich in his book New Rules says he thinks some 80% of the adult American population is experimenting with some greater form of creativity and self-fulfillment. What's not happening is our mass media is not picking it up. Our mass media is picking up sex and violence and putting us to sleep. My own step, just along these lines, is I've decided that I want to have a television show in which I will every week put forward ideas of potentials and bring on people who themselves are taking steps to help others who are out there who may never have had the advantage of seeing someone else do it, know they can do it. And also to give them, it's a self-help television show idea, to say, well, if you want to get this book, or you can find a local organization, or you can do this, that, and the other. So the answer is, find out your creativity, take the risk to do more, and meet others doing the same, and your life will lift off. It'll be fun, too.
Well, in our daily aspirations and everything, do you think that the policy of the law of karma is a more moralistic understanding?
Say that again.
The law of karma.
The law of karma.
Karma, yeah.
Do I think it's a what?
That it's a better moralistical road to take.
I don't know that I fully understand karma, but I've come to realize in my own life that I am responsible for everything that happens to me. I am responsible not only for my acts, but my thoughts. And when I have a thought that creates a negativity in me, I know it's creating a negativity out there. And I've accepted the doctrine for myself. I have not been able to go so far as to see someone suffering or see a child born blind and say that's karma. Now, there are people who go that far with it. I can't. But I must admit that whenever I make a mistake, I know I did it. And it's a wonderful state of being because I no longer feel a victim. I'm responsible. I'm responsible for everything that happens to me. And in that world, even when it seems to come from the outside, I take it as a lesson, I ask why, and I learn.
I'm not sure how to phrase this question, but you keep referring to Jesus and to the New Testament. I myself am a Christian, but I was wondering, do you find not only the normative, but the soul access to Jesus as being through the New Testament? In other words, what is the role of established churches? Many Christian denominations see Christ as being mediated mostly through Christian communities.
Yes. Well, I see the church having had in the past first of all, the church formed because the end did not come in the life of the early disciples. They really thought that when Jesus said he would return, he meant next Monday. You know, they didn't ever expect to form an institution. They put all their belongings in common, and they said, "Repent, hurry, 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 hurry! The kingdom is coming. Hurry up! Change your mind right now, because you will be judged according to the state you're in," which is very interesting, because I must say I find myself saying exactly the same thing. But what happened, of course, is that the end didn't come. So Paul started to write letters, the epistles, to all these little congregations who were waiting for the end to come. But being human, they started to have all these other problems, sex and money and leadership and jealousy. So he had to say, well, do this, do this, do this. And so you got the beginnings of the early church, which was persecuted. Then, as you know, you got Constantine, and the church became institutionalized, which was to some degree a disaster from the point of view of the original impetus of that church. However, regardless of all the institutional problems that have come in the church, the thing to me that is so extraordinary, that for almost 2,000 years, this promise of total transformation was kept and passed on generation after generation. When you think of what the communion ceremony really says, it's take, eat this in remembrance of me. You shall do the works that I do. You are to become like me. And through the Dark Ages and the Middle Ages and the Renaissance and the early science, and then recently people making fun of it all, they kept on saying it. Now, what I think is happening is that promise is the greatest promise and the truest promise, and it's starting to happen. Now, the problem with any institution is that when what it's been preparing for actually starts to happen, it may be the last to know. It may be the one saying, whoa, 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 wait a minute. We really don't want to see all this change, because we are good at giving you the promise, but we don't know what to do about the reality. And so it's usually upstart outsiders who come along and say, hey, you've been right all along, and then they're ostracized by the institution, like Teilhard de Chardin, and they carry on the great tradition. And institutions disappear, but the promise will not. Now, I hope this isn't heretical or blasphemous, that the church of the future will be the church of the acting out of the promise. And I think what those of us who are attracted to such things as the planetary Pentecost and the acting out of the new potentials need the guidance of the promise. We have to be guided by something. The church, unfortunately, is not stepping out front and saying, here we've got a model to guide us. They are saying it's not normal to do these things, it's not natural to do these things. But in fact, the founder of the Christian religion manifested a total transformation. So what will happen is Jesus will be used by those who are transforming. And my own Christian mission, if I could say it, I have one, is to point out to people that we have the model of that toward which we must move.
What gives you any confidence that your image of Jesus has anything to do with the historical Jesus?
I have not been a biblical scholar, I just went up to Harvard Divinity School and gave a talk, and I was appalled that they didn't believe in God. They didn't believe really in anything other than the historical phenomenon. And I felt like, a radical believer in the midst of agnosticism. I think historicity is so shallow a view, even though it's interesting, because the reality of the promise is such that it resonates in your own soul. And if you feel it, it's there, and if it isn't, it doesn't matter what history says about it anyway.
Do you have any criteria for being self-critical or anything outside of yourself that you could use to measure against your own judgments?
You ask me the best questions. The only thing that I have, or I have two things. One is my own higher voice or meditative experience, which is very hard on me. And I seem to get it a lot from that. And secondly, my peers, because they sure give it to you. The only thing you've got is your peers and your own higher self.
That sounds to me like church.
It does. Yeah. Wherever 2 or 3 are gathered in my name, there is the church. As far as I'm concerned, this is part of the church. Well, thank you all very much. This is most interesting.